Good afternoon and good morning, everyone. I just wanted to let you know that we are recording this today and just going to wait just a couple more minutes. We've got a few more people joining in, but we'll get started in about 2 minutes. Hello, everyone. I want to thank you for joining us today for the webinar. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the March 2020 Extension Disaster Education Network Professional Development Webinar. My name is Julie Buck, and I'm an Extension Educator in Family and Consumer Sciences at the University of Idaho Extension. So I'd like you to please take a moment to drop your name and institution in the chat box so we can know who is with us today. So down at the bottom of your screen, if you'll just go to chat and just type your name and your institution, we'd really appreciate it. Today, our presentation will be Know How to Keep Your Food Safe, Reduce the Risk of Foodborne Illness Due to Loss of Power. And our speaker is Joyce McGarry. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. If you have any questions during the presentation, just type them in the chat box in your Zoom control panel at the bottom, just exactly where you just put your name and your university. And I'll bring them up at the end of the presentation. And I'd also just like to remind you that this is being recorded. I've also just placed a link in the chat box for the webinar evaluation survey. Please take a moment and complete that at the conclusion of the webinar. I'll go ahead and post it again at the end of the webinar so you can easily find it then as well. Now, without any further time, I'd like to turn the time over to our presenter. Our presenter today is Joyce McGarry. Joyce is a food safety educator at Michigan State University Extension. She has worked in the area of emergency preparedness for 20 years. She has written several fact sheets during fires, floods, and tornadoes. She also manages the MSU Extension Consumer Hotline to help consumers with food safety questions. Joyce, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Julie. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you all for joining us today. I appreciate that. I wanted to start the webinar out with just 2 questions because I want to make sure that the topic that we're discussing today can affect your personal life as well as in your teaching careers as well. So Abby is going to put up 2 questions that I'd like you to answer. It's either, it's a simple yes or no, or I don't know. The first one is, do you have an additional thermometer in your refrigerator? That means more than just what came with the refrigerator. Mine happens to be a very old refrigerator, so all I have in mine is A, B, C, and D. So that doesn't help me a whole lot. So I always feel that it's important to have an additional thermometer in there. Okay, so we have 71% have yes, 33 no. Good. That'd be a nice balance. So we're going to talk about how important it is to keep that in there as well. And why is definitely the most important reason. And the next question is, do you have additional thermometers in your freezer? Same thing. Yes, no, don't know if there's one in there or not. Okay. End of polling, 56% yes, 44% no. That's sort of half and half, really. I'm surprised at that. But we're going to go into the purpose of the questions, basically. So thank you very much for participating in that. It gives me an idea of where we're coming from in our audience, and definitely hope that at the end of this webinar that those that have said no will definitely change their mind and put in an additional thermometer. Okay, that's the goal here, so I hope so. Julie said if there are questions in the chat, just let me know. We can either address them right away, or we can wait until the end of the webinar is over, whatever the question is. If it's a really important one during my talk, I'll certainly address it right away. So anyway, so thank you again for joining me. I'm presenting from East Lansing, Michigan, Michigan State University Extension. And like Julie said, I have worked in the area of food safety for over 20 years. It actually started with Y2K, with people storing the large amounts of food during that period of time from 1999 into the new decade of 2000. And people really wanted to know why and how to store food and what types of food would be the best to save over a period of time. So that got me into the, definitely into the environment and the realm of seeing how important it is that people store food correctly as well. And then when I decided to get into more emergency preparedness and joined the Eden group, there were so many opportunities to talk about food and food safety during these disasters that happened all year round, it seemed like. So I really felt that this webinar would be important. Foodborne illness, as you know, is in the news a lot, depending on our food sources. So we certainly do not want to add to an emergency and disaster situation to have foodborne illness as well. And unfortunately, during those types of crises is when we may overlook the safety of the food that we're eating. So I really wanted to make sure that we had information out there across the nation on the importance of keeping our food safe during emergencies as well. So thank you again for joining me and for doing our poll. And as we know, it is hard to even keep food safe during ordinary times, let alone during emergencies and disasters. And in 2019 alone, we had over 300 natural global disasters. And that included fires, windstorms, drought, rain, a lot of flooding, and earthquakes and volcanoes. So it was quite a variety of different circumstances that we had to experience. And it's gonna, and we never know when they will occur. That's kind of the scary part. So of course, eating any type of food that have any, that have been time temperature abused in some way, not kept hot or kept cold for the right amount of time, has a potential of having bacteria or pathogens in it. And then illnesses can occur when people eat those types of food. Similar symptoms of foodborne illness, as we know, are vomiting, diarrhea, abdominal pain. About 2 to 3% of all foodborne illnesses lead to serious long-term illnesses such as kidney failure and arthritis. So,
Joyce,
I'm sorry.
Joyce, this is Julie. Your slides are not advancing. You
Oh.
need, we're still on the first slide.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Let me get this thing going here. Okay. So anyway, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention estimates that the foodborne microorganisms annually cause about 48 million illnesses, along with 128,000 hospitalizations. And the worst part is 3,000 people may die every year from foodborne illness. So we do not want to add that on top of emergencies and crisis situations. So let's discuss how food becomes contaminated. First of all, air from heat and smoke from fire that can contaminate exposed food. Access to safe water can certainly be cut off or become contaminated during a natural disaster or emergency. And one of the most common causes of food contamination is lack of proper hygiene and sanitation, causing cross-contamination. Not washing our hands correctly after using the bathroom, sneezing or coughing and then handling food, or not washing and sanitizing kitchen utensils and countertops before and after preparing food are some examples of cross-contamination. And biological contaminants can happen when food has not been kept at the right temperatures. So meaning foods that need to be kept cold and those that need to be kept hot for safety are not held at the correct temperatures due to lack of power, lack of gas, whatever heating sources we have, causing potential bacteria to multiply in food. And then the next one is chemicals, which you might be a little surprised at, but household chemicals that are stored near or with food can also be a contaminant. So it's especially important to keep your household chemicals away from any food and food prep areas. So air, first contaminant we're going to discuss today. Air can become contaminated from toxic fumes. One of the dangers of a fire can be poisonous fumes from burning materials. Toxic fumes can contaminate food both inside and outside refrigerators and freezers. Food stored in permeable packaging, such as the cardboard or plastic wrapped types of food, should be thrown away if exposed to these types of conditions because of that air being contaminating it. Raw food stored outside the refrigerator, such as fruits, can also be contaminated by hazardous fumes, something that cannot be washed off. Food stored in refrigerators and freezers can become unsafe if seals are not airtight. So food in cans and jars that have been close to heat of a fire may activate food spoilage bacteria that you wouldn't even think of. Heat can even be hot enough to split and rupture cans and jars. So to be safe, we suggest you throw away any food that has any type of off flavor, odor, or has burned near fire or exposed to fumes or smoke. So water is our next category. And I think we all know, listen to our regulatory authorities to know the status of our water supply in our communities during disasters and emergencies. But you never should be drinking water during or after an emergency without knowing if it's safe or not. Floodwaters may contain germs, dangerous chemicals, human or livestock waste even, and other contaminants that could make you sick. Do not use contaminated water to wash dishes, brush your teeth, wash and prepare food, washing your hands, or making ice or baby formula as well. Personal hygiene. Proper personal hygiene should be continued during and after an emergency situation. If you're not able to leave your location, your home, for a period of time, and someone near you is experiencing diarrhea and vomiting, they should certainly avoid any type of food handling or preparation. We're all familiar with the virus norovirus, which is one of the leading causes of foodborne illness. People having norovirus can easily transfer the virus by touching food and surfaces that have not been properly washed. Proper hand washing is the single most effective method in avoiding foodborne illness from viruses. Proper hand washing includes 5 steps, and many people have the tendency to skip one or more of them. The first one, of course, is wetting your hands and arms. Wetting and then applying your soap. Scrubbing hands and arms is one of the most effective parts of the 20 seconds. I know we all know 20 seconds is very important, but that 10 to 15 seconds of scrubbing is one of the most important parts to get any of that bacteria that potentially may be on your hands. And then, of course, rinsing with the warm running water is also a very important step, and drying thoroughly. Paper towel, hand dryer. We really do not recommend cloth towels because they have that habit of being used over and over again. So paper towel is certainly a better choice. But of course, hand sanitizer is another choice. If soap and water are not readily available, hand sanitizer can be substituted as long as it has at least 60% alcohol in it. But of course, we do know that washing with soap and water is the best alternative. This one I think is the most scary because biological contaminants is something you cannot see, taste, or smell. It really depends on how it's been stored and if it's been stored properly. That's where the temperature thermometers come into play with refrigerators and freezers, and even coolers. If that's an option to keep your food cold at times, to use a cooler with different types of ice and gels packs. That's a good alternative, but that cooler still has to remain at 40 degrees as well. So the importance of keeping this additional temperature monitor in your refrigerator and freezer helps to determine if your food is safe. Biological contamination of food happens when food is not held or stored at the correct temperatures. Food that needs to have temperature control has the potential of developing harmful microorganisms, or pathogens is what they're called. And then some pathogens can make you sick. Understanding how these biological contaminants can happen is the first step of preventing foodborne illness. Without electricity or a cold source for a period of time, food stored in refrigerators and freezers can become unsafe. Bacteria in food can grow rapidly at temperatures between 40 and 140 degrees Fahrenheit. Refrigerated food should be safe as long as the power has not been out for more than 4 hours and the refrigerator has maintained the 40 degrees temperatures. It is recommended to throw away any perishable food, such as meat, poultry, fish, eggs, or any type of leftovers that have been at temperatures above 40 degrees for 2 or more hours. Or if you live in a very warm climate, 1 hour if they go above 90 degrees. Foodborne illness symptoms can occur from 30 minutes to as long as 6 weeks, depending on the type of pathogen in the food. Everyone is at risk for foodborne illness, but we do have 3 especially vulnerable groups that I'm sure we all know and love. Those would be seniors, children younger than 5 years old, and people with a weakened immune system. They may be going through chemotherapy, dialysis, radiation. Always keep meat, poultry, fish, and eggs refrigerated at or below 40 degrees, and frozen foods at or below 0 degrees. And always remember to never taste food to see if it's safe. Bacteria, remember, cannot be seen, smelled, or tasted. There are several ways that chemicals can contaminate food. Some chemicals are used to fight fires, and they can contaminate your food and cookware. Food stored at room temperature, such as fresh fruits and vegetables, any type of jars with screw tops and cardboard containers are also easily contaminated by chemicals and fumes and should be thrown away. Another form of chemical contamination can come from our own home, as I initially said. So it is suggested to always store food away from petroleum products such as gasoline, oil, paints, and solvents. And always keep your cleaners and sanitizers, deodorizers, first aid products, health and beauty products away from food. Simply putting hand lotion on your hands and then preparing a salad can create a chemical contamination and possibly make you sick. If transferring chemicals into other types of containers, just make sure that it's labeled very boldly so everyone understands what's in that container. So considerations for emergency food. It's important to consider your own family special needs. Individuals with special diets and allergies may need particular foods to be stored. Canned foods, juices, and soups may be helpful for ill or elderly people. In an effort to prepare, have each family member pick their favorite canned and non-perishable foods for your emergency supply kit. Keep disinfectant wipes and dish soap available to help with washing and sanitizing. And prepare your emergency water supply based on your family's needs. The need may vary depending on ages, health, physical condition, activity, diet, and even climate. Always store your own bottled water in food-grade containers that have been sanitized, and remember to replace them every 6 months. Commercially bottled water should be stored unopened in a cool, dark place. If you decide to reuse storage containers for water, it is suggested that you use 2-liter plastic soft drink bottles, not plastic jugs or cardboard milk or juice containers. These types of containers cannot be cleaned well enough to remove any proteins or sugars that may promote bacteria growth. Cardboard containers leak and are not designed for long-term storage of liquids, and glass containers are heavy and can easily break. If you are uncertain if your water is safe or if you run out of your stored water, there are 2 ways to treat water. Boiling water is one method. In a large pot, bring water to a rolling boil for 1 full minute and then let the water cool before drinking. Chlorination is another method. As long as you're not using scented, color-safe bleaches or bleaches with added cleaners. Adding an 1/8 teaspoon of bleach per gallon of water, stir, and let stand for 30 minutes. The water should have a slight bleach odor, but if it doesn't, you should repeat the dosage and then let it stand for another 15 minutes. And don't forget your pets. Don't forget to store and keep them non-perishable foods as well. It's to your advantage to keep your freezer half full or at least 3/4 full by stocking it with containers of water to fill the space. You can also use those containers as drinking water if needed. Always remember to check your expiration dates and use-by dates of all emergency food, rotating your food supply every 6 months. A disaster supply kit is a collection of basic items you and your family would anticipate needing to stay safe and comfortable during and after a disaster. It is recommended to review the contents of your kit at least once a year or as your family's needs change. Stock canned foods, dry mixes, and other staples that do not require refrigeration, cooking, water, or special preparation. And don't forget that manual can opener as well, and eating utensils. Keep an appliance thermometer in your refrigerator and freezer to help determine if food will remain safe. A refrigerator can keep the temperature of 40 degrees for about 4 to 6 hours if the door is not opened. A full freezer will keep the temperature for about 48 hours, and a half full freezer for about 24 hours, as long as that door remains closed. When cleaning and disinfecting after an emergency or disaster, it's important to protect yourself with protective clothing and gloves to avoid any skin contact or irritation. Discard any wooden cutting boards or wooden dishes and utensils. Plastic utensils, as well as baby bottle nipples and pacifiers, should also be thrown away if they've come in contact with unsafe water. Wash metal pans, ceramic dishes, and utensils with soap, hot water, rinsing, and then sanitizing in boiling water or a bleach solution of 1 tablespoon of bleach per gallon of clean water. Canned goods that have not become damaged and cookware that has been exposed to chemicals can be sanitized again. This means canned goods can be washed with soap, hot water, and a bleach solution of 1 tablespoon of unscented bleach per gallon of water for 15 minutes. Also remember to remove the labels from cans. They can harbor bacteria as well. So label those cans with a permanent marker. Wash your countertops with soap and hot water. Rinse and sanitize again with a solution of 1 tablespoon bleach per gallon of clean water and allow it to air dry. Do not wipe off the sanitizer. Carefully clean your door handles, your door seals, your cracks and corners of any flooded areas. Discard any perishable foods again, like meat, poultry, eggs, leftovers, if they've gone above that 40 degrees or more for 2 or more hours. Freezer foods, if kept at 40 degrees or below, can be refrozen, but do not rely on appearance and odor, okay? If the food still contains ice crystals and is 40 degrees or below in that freezer, it can be refrozen or cooked. Perishable foods not been kept at safe temperatures have a high potential for pathogens. Remember, bacteria cannot be seen, smelled, or tasted. It is recommended not to eat food that's packed in plastic or paper, cardboard, cloth, or similar containers that have been subjected to water or other contaminated sources. Throw away food and beverages with screw caps, snap lids, crimped caps, twist caps, flip tops, and definitely home canned foods. These types of foods cannot be disinfected. For sanitation and fire hazards, it's also suggested not to keep garbage inside the house. Some recovering from disasters have a difficult time getting past the emotional distress, but others may bounce back without many problems. But it's important to monitor the physical and emotional health of your family and friends. There are many supportive resources to help minimize stress during difficult times. Michigan State University Extension, in collaboration with West Virginia University Extension, presents the Stress Less with Mindfulness program throughout Michigan. We're very proud of this team that has recognized the importance of cooperating and handling stress. And of course, emergencies and disasters is one situation that it can certainly be a helpful tool. So learning the 5 hours of mindfulness can increase your ability to cope with stress, including anxiety created from disasters and emergency situations. Mindfulness can be defined as paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. Research has shown mindfulness programs can improve coping with stress and in situations of sustained stress. Research has shown mindfulness programs can improve coping with stress and in situations of sustained stress. Mindfulness can help to self-regulate emotions, improve clarity of thinking for a healthier recovery. We have common reactions to disasters and emergency situations. It's common to be afraid and angry and wanting to blame someone. It takes time to get over a crisis and have your life return to normal. Our brain is on autopilot when it comes to our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Mindfulness helps us to shift out of that automatic mode to help our mind and body respond more skillfully to stress and improve our ability to cope with our emotions and to help to focus our thinking to make better decisions. During a disaster, you can use mindfulness as a way to slow down. Notice, become aware of where your attention is being directed. Notice your stress cues. The next is shifting. Pay attention to the present moment. You may have to get out of that autopilot and understand that the environment, the situation has changed and move to accepting it. And then move from reacting to responding, okay, in a calm, less stressful way. I'm sure you're wondering how this relates to emergencies and food, but I saw such a good correlation between the two when it comes to being on autopilot and automatic to always think that I can go in that refrigerator and pull out any type of food that I wanted during an emergency where power may have been out for some period of time. It really helps to shift away into a mode where you are understanding power has been out for a period of time. I should not eat those leftovers, or maybe the meat and poultry that has been left in there for more than 2 hours. So this gives us a better understanding of how to be healthier during an emergency situation. And it definitely helps us to shift our thoughts to our circumstances that we're experiencing now and awareness of our environment. You may not be able to go back to your normal routine right away when a crisis or emergency is over. Recovery may take a while. So it helps to understand how to determine if your environment is safe. Floodwaters that may have contaminated everything in your home as well as your food supply. How and when to clean and sanitize, how to protect ourselves during the cleanup, and definitely, is there any food left here that's safe to eat? So notice how long food has not been kept refrigerated or frozen. And of course, if in doubt, throw it out. There is a natural man-made disasters can affect mental health, and disaster distress helpline is one of resources that can be helpful. It's a 24/7 hotline, 365 days a year, a national resource dedicated to providing immediate crisis counseling for people who are experiencing emotional distress related to any natural or human-caused disaster. Toll-free number it is with bilingual and confidential crisis support services, and it's available to all residents in the United States and its territories. These are some examples of resources that Michigan State University has available on their website. Building a healthy mindset can help us get back on track when we lose our way, and improve stress management and our ability to handle change, which comes with emergencies and disasters. How stress affects you is a helpful list detailing how stress affects your body, your thoughts, your feelings, and how you deal with them. We cannot always predict, but we can prepare. It is important that we educate and empower ourselves to prepare and respond to potential emergencies. All of us should have emergency supply kits and an emergency plan and be informed. Basic supply items should include the unique needs of your family. People should also consider having 2 emergency supply kits, one for your home and a smaller portable kits for your workplace or car. Knowing the proper food safety precautions to take before, during, and after a power outage is the key to preventing foodborne illness. This Food Keeper resource helps us to understand and determine the safety and quality of our food. Certain conditions such as power outages can certainly deteriorate our food more quickly. There is a Food Keeper app that can be downloaded on your phone or a printed PDF version at this website. Michigan State University also has an emergency preparedness series of fact sheets where they talk about keeping food safe after a fire, after a flood, and definitely during a power outage. Residential fires are unfortunately a common occurrence. Some 2 million American homes are damaged or destroyed by fire yearly. In the aftermath of fire, people are left to salvage their lives and belongings. Power outages make it hard to keep food cold and to properly heat it. Following food safety procedures will keep food safe during an emergency or disaster. And when a natural disaster, such as a flood, strikes a community, the risk of getting a foodborne illness certainly increases. Take the proper precautions before and after a flood to ensure the safety of your food. I wanted to put in this at the end because this is such a great example of long-term recovery efforts. I know we talked about short-term cleaning, sanitizing, throwing away contaminated food, but there's also opportunities that MSU Extension has taken with a very serious crisis that occurred in Flint in 2014, and how we are still helping to make resources for people who are affected by that emergency situation. So if you're not aware, the Flint crisis was a public health crisis that started in 2014 after the drinking water source for the city of Flint, Michigan was changed. In April 2014, Flint changed its water source from treating Detroit Water and Sewage Department water to the Flint water. Officials failed to apply corrosion inhibitors to the water, and as a result, lead from aging pipes leached into the water supply, leading to extremely elevated levels of the heavy metal and exposing over 100,000 residents to elevated lead levels and E. coli outbreaks. The Flint water crisis is continuing their long-term community recovery efforts with three key groups: local agencies, government, faith communities, and MSU Extension. MSU Extension nutrition programs adapted their curriculums to focus on recipes that contained iron and calcium and vitamin C to help deter the effects of high lead. Ongoing long-term recovery efforts for Flint, Michigan residents included nutrition classes, consumer hotline, safe cooking and preparation of food with safe water. Michigan State University Extension nutrition educators developed these lead fact sheets for Flint residents and are now continued to be used across Michigan and the nation as research-based resources. Michigan State University Food Safety Team developed safe food handling and preserving fact sheets for Flint residents. Lead was not the only contaminant found in Flint's water. In 2014, the city of Flint issued a boil water advisory because of E. coli. Between 2014 and 2015, there was an outbreak of Legionnaire's disease, which was a serious form of pneumonia. All residents of Flint were advised to use bottled water. These are continued efforts by MSU Extension to keep residents and consumers understanding cooking and safe handling of food. The Food Safety Hotline was first established as a food safety resource for only Flint residents. It's now continued and expanded statewide for all consumers to use. In 2019, MSU Extension food safety educators have answered over 200 food safety calls from consumers. They range from power outages, if my food is still safe after a period of time, to how long does food keep, and what does expiration dates mean, what's the use by date mean. It's been a very valuable resource for our Michigan consumers. That is the end of my program. I wondered if there is any questions in the chat I can answer, or if there's any comments that you'd like to share. That was kind of a brief presentation, but I'm hoping that it was helpful. And for those of you that do not have an additional thermometer in your refrigerator or freezer, I hope this is enough information to have you use one now.
Thank you, Joyce. That was wonderful. We'll go ahead and, as Joyce mentioned, we have some time for some questions. And if you'll just type those in the chat box, I'll go ahead and read them out to Joyce. I'm also, I also noticed that Becky posted a link, appreciate that, so that you can look at more Eden's family preparedness. So if you want to lift that link out of that chat box, those of you that are in attendance today or listen to this later, that looks like a great resource as well. We do have a lot of resources on Eden's website. So if you're not familiar with that, please do visit. Glenda Hyde's asking, will these slides be available to download?
Yes, I believe Abby will be putting them on the website. They can be put on the website.
Yes, so my follow-up note at the end is going to be that the webinar will be archived on the Eden website and a YouTube channel and distributed throughout the listserv. So that is definitely going to happen, Glenda, yes. Any questions that we can help with? Well, we've got Joyce live here. Do you have a frequently asked question and answer handout or fact sheet based on the questions from the hotline, Joyce?
We are actually in development of that. That's a really good question. Thank you for asking. Yes, we are going to establish the frequently asked questions for guides for everyone. They range from so many different types of questions that we haven't narrowed down the frequently asked ones yet.
Totally understand that. Thank you. That's a great resource. Any other questions? Again, really appreciate you coming. I have included the link to the evaluation survey. If you'll please give us some feedback, we'd really appreciate it. And as was posted here, the slides will be emailed out tomorrow to everyone who attended. So you won't have to go to the Eden website or to the YouTube channel either. We'll also just invite you to come back on April 14th for the next Eden Professional Development webinar, which will be on emergency preparedness for the preservation of cultural artifacts. Thank you so much to everyone who attended, and especially to Joyce. We appreciate you coming. Have a good day, everybody.